Today we have Atul Batra, CTO, Algonomy, previously called Manthan, joining us. Atul has a distinguished career across many technology companies and brings a deep commitment and passion to promote deep tech ecosystem emerging from India. Atul, welcome to Kalaari's behind the scenes episode. I really appreciate you making time for this podcast and excited to hear your learnings and insight as we talk more about the deep tech opportunity in India today.
No, thank you so much, Vani, for having me over. And I have to say, I have great respect for what you do, Vani, and the service you do for our ecosystem. And you've believed in India products and startups before most. So great to be here.
Well, I know you're doing a big part of that contribution yourself, both through the work you do on NPC at NASSCOM, and a shout out for that because that has turned out to be such an important event that we all in the ecosystem look forward to. And in fact, the most exciting entrepreneurs I get to meet at NPC. But I also know you have the Deep Tech Club where you mentor many deep tech startups, and you've been doing that for a long time. And you have been bullish about the potential for us to grow these deep tech startups. So I'd like to start with your thoughts on what is the India deep tech ecosystem today and what is the opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question, Vani. And maybe I'll give a little bit of background. So look, if we look back, as we know, we've done great building our IT services industry, BPM, BPO, other sectors, and we're the global leader there. And as we know, the next wave is products and startups, right? And as you know more than anyone, Vani, I mean, in under a decade and a half since we kind of formalized products in India, we are already the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. And kind of now the focus, is not just on quantity, but quality, right? And we have discussed in the past, our strengths are talent and scale. I mean, unprecedented scale in India, right? And not only in terms of number of engineers, etc., but the fundamental problems that exist in our part of the world where we can apply technology and solve for India, but also for the world. If you look 1,000 years back, right, we had nearly 30% of the world's GDP. We were one of the leaders, if not the leader, in innovation. So, what we are doing with the Deep Tech Club is a small attempt to start to climb back to that sort of position, right? And, and deep tech is that innovation, right? And I mean, I argue that deep tech is the biggest disruption in the history of mankind, reinventing us as a species. I mean, in the next 10 years, I think we'll exceed the innovation that's happened, so far in history, right? So, I want to talk a little bit about the role of the club, right? And so the role of the club is basically, to put it simply, is to make India innovation powerhouse within a decade, right? So we do have a time frame in mind, and we have a large community behind it. And so the club was bootstrapped about 4 years back, by some visionary people. And I think credit to NASSCOM for starting such a focused initiative on innovation, before the term deep tech became mainstream, at least in India, right? And today, fast forward 4 years in the making, we have almost about 80 startups, right? And we are ready to scale this club. And it's not just been about mentoring, and we have some 100 very capable mentors paying it forward. And what have we achieved so far? I mean, in terms of activity, we've done, to give you a sense of the scale, we've done over 1,000 investor connect meetings, right? We've done over 1,000 enterprise or business connect meetings for our what we call mentees, the startup. We've done well over 1,000 hours of personalized mentoring, and we've tried to track some of these metrics, right? So the next phase of the club is really about scaling. If I take many steps back, lastly, the goal is to create, and it's a very audacious goal, from where we are today, to create the largest umbrella of deep tech globally, the largest watering hole, and not just India, and bring a community together comprising the entrepreneur, the tech company, like I said, the business, the investor, research and academia, and government. So, yes, I am very bullish. We are starting from a, small, slate, but I think this decade will be, India's decade when we look at innovation.
Atul, that's like you said, audacious vision and great. And I'm such a Indophile. I'm excited for the future that you're painting. The question I have is talk about talent. How do we grow the talent for this? Where is this talent coming from? And how do you increase the talent funnel for this? What are your thoughts? Are we talent deficit for this, or do we have surplus talent on this?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have to look at reality today. I mean, short answer is no. I mean, to be very blunt, we don't have the talent, but we have a lot of promise. I mean, we have breadth, but we lack depth. And it's not because of, a lack of intent from people, right? It's just an evolution. I mean, if we go back, I mean, the holy grail, Vani, as you know, the template in, kind of the US, Israel, China is, this thing called research, right? And what we lack is industry academia collaboration. I mean, again, very blunt, my learning is, I mean, they just don't talk to each other, right?
Mm.
I mean, outside of exceptions, right? So and there are good exceptions, and the two flows are very simple. We need massive funding going into research and academia from the industry, from our product industry, right? And for our startups, we need to build a very lightweight model because they cannot do too much of processy stuff, right? So massive funding going in for scientific research, long term, publishing papers and all of that. Not everything can be a packaged use case for a product. But the reverse, we need to see a lot of IP coming out of research and academia that is fundamentally, deep tech, right? And I always, I look back, I went to a tier two computer science master's program in the US. My professor, I mean, I was seeing recently, he's raised money about 65 million in his lifetime just for himself from industry and government, right? And things like US Navy and all, right? So I think we have a way to go there. The other things are, when we talk about talent, it's not just about building technology, right? It's about solving problems, right? So I think one thing we have realized is the second kind of big leg of that table is product management, right? What problem can you solve? Is arguably more important than how you can solve it.
Atul, we are talking about a topic, deep tech, which is like the buzzword right now. What constitutes deep tech? How do you define deep tech? Because today, every company, startup company that I see, says that, they're a deep tech company. So, what does it really mean to be, a deep tech company?
Yeah. I think deep tech is a fancy word for anything futuristic, frontier technology. We don't have a strict definition, in our community, Vani, in terms of what we're doing. We look at, uh, family of AI technologies, machine learning, NLP, computer vision, to things like IoT, certainly AR, VR, robotics. We have some interesting robotics, company, quantum, right? Blockchain. So, it's very open-ended, right? But I think, deep tech is kind of, it's not, it's a horizontal today. Think of it like the new Java, right? I mean, it's an imperative, right? And, if you look at the deep tech club, right, what we have seen, right? I mean, we have, the question begs, are you actually building core deep tech? Are you building an application on top? So in India today, where we are building more applications, which may be, part of the cycle, right? Core deep tech, building core deep tech would be inventing a new type of algorithm, a new technique, which is, net new globally, right? In terms of invention. Applying deep tech would be taking some open source and building layers on top of it targeted at a use case, hopefully, for an industry vertical, right? So, if you look at, people have a stricter definition and they say, are you working at the Linux kernel level? Are you building a new operating system? As you know, Vani, it's very hard to compete with Silicon Valley on all of that today. So I don't think we need to mimic the West and build traditional computing and operating systems. I think, I don't think we can follow the US model or the China model blindly. We need to evolve our own model. We have our own unique problems to solve. And, as we know, this era is going to be about, devices, drones, robotics, nanotech, biotech, etc. And I think we have a promising start. If you look at the data, the NASSCOM data, 41% growth on the deep tech startup pool, right? And it's growing faster than the startup ecosystem, right? So whatever we categorize loosely as deep tech, in 2020, more than 2,100 Indian startups have adopted deep tech technologies, up from 1,600 the previous year, right? So 1,600 to 2,100. So we are seeing a significant ramp up. Now, is a company a deep tech company? Is it a SaaS company? I think it will be a combination. There'll be, there's no strict delineation there, right? And if you look at, people like you, Vani, in the investor funding, we are seeing, 14% of startup investments, from NASSCOM data is in deep tech ventures in 2020, which is 11% higher than last year, right? And, of this, most of the money is going towards, things like machine learning. I think the data says about 87% of investor money, including seed, is going towards, right?
So, two-part question, Atul. What is it that you would like my industry, which is the venture capital industry, uh, do more of? And what is it that you would like to see founders do more of? Because this is a symbiotic relationship, you know.
Good question, Vani. I'm going to broaden that, Vani, because I think investor and the entrepreneur are two. I mean, I like to say Silicon Valley is as much a consumption story as it is an innovation story. So, and that's where, all of our deep tech companies need to look, to Western markets, right? The US and all, right? So I think we need to unlock, more of a domestic market for early adopters. But, if I take a step back, some of this is in the investor bucket. As we know, the number one metric to be a world-class deep tech company is the quantum of R&D investment, right? I mean, there are multiple factors, but I think for building a world-class deep tech company, you have to invest in R&D. Otherwise, you'll have something superficial, right? And even if you have first mover advantage and it is a big market that's being created, you will not sustain, right? So yes, solve customer problem, but deep tech innovation is about finding new ways to solve that same problem, right? And I think, you know, my thesis is we've barely hit 1% of use cases that can be solved using deep tech, right? And that's where I think India can start to lead. But, to build those applications and then, go deeper and, have moats and all, I think we need, as we need more patient capital. And that's the challenge, right? We need significant R&D cycles. If we need to work with research and academia, we cannot be looking at months or a year. We need to look long-term horizon, right? So long gestation cycles, right? And generally, I mean, our investor community, no disrespect to them, it's evolution. I mean, are looking at top of line revenue metrics and adoption metrics, right? And you know that very well. So I think we need to we need to come together and sort of balance that. And for the right entrepreneurs, right, we need to give them longer runways, right? And that, I mean, that's the challenge, I think. But it there'll be big rewards there, as we know, especially when we talk about the India class problem. Secondly, this is going to non-investor, non-entrepreneur, like I said. And I say India Inc. needs to come to a startup party. And that, Vani, I hope we all agree, our businesses in India are missing, right? I mean, it's just the investors, the entrepreneurs, and government is trying to do some policy work and all, right? We have to create a culture of early adopters and experimentation in India. Today, we have too much reliance on global markets, right? And so one good, kind of channel there is this whole make in India, made for India, Atmanirbhar, right? And we have to make it a reality. And the challenge there is, I think innovation is not understood. And I argue more than our deep tech entrepreneurs, the large companies need it more. I mean, like if even a SME today is a tech company, leave aside a business, right? And I mean, look at the impact WhatsApp has had on our SMEs, how they do business, right? So I think, I would again assert that in the next 5 years, if Indian businesses have not embraced enough of what we call deep tech, right, new tech, and integrated it into every business process, role, etc., they will be on a death spiral. And we just have to look at the graveyard money of Fortune 500 companies in the US that are no longer there, right? And look what Amazon has done. And that's where, we have role models like, I would say, Reliance. Reliance is very strong on technology. They've done some M&A. They do work with the startup ecosystem, right? So I think the rest of India needs to follow, right? And there are two things there. One, they need to, of course, invest, fund, acquire some of our deep tech startups, right? Uh, Secondly, they need to build this culture of experimentation. And, like in the US, you have, corporate innovation programs, or, there are roles people have to look for, disruptive innovation, which could change the trajectory of the business, right? So I think those are the kind of cultures we need to bring. And, you know, um, it will take its cycles, but I think, what we need to do is work on, more education. Related to that is, back to Atmanirbhar is our strategic sectors, Vani. I mean, if you look at the defense sector, it's globally, it's a multi-trillion dollar. I was reading, I think India is the top two defense importer, right? I mean, if it's all about robots and drones, and, we're looking at trillions of military hardware and software, going legacy, right? How about, working with our startups much more deeply, right? Same thing with railways, same thing with space. I think ISRO opened up working with, with startups, right? So that's a great thing, right? And we have to keep in mind a lot of this, what's called disruptive innovation, is only possible at the entrepreneurial level. I mean, there are large companies that do this, but those are far and few. Again, the Amazons and Facebooks, and we know who they are, right? And only the entrepreneur can reimagine, how to solve an existing problem, right? The other thing I'll go is, back to academia industry collaboration. That would be very high. And I think on the reality is, most of the market is in, like in the US. Like, if you look at certain sectors, if you do the math, uh, the US is 10x SARC, not only India. So, for a deep tech entrepreneur, should they be caught between India and US? I mean, they can only focus so much, right? So I think we need to light up more US GTM, give them seats in the US to start selling. For the right companies, we need to give them booths in industry shows, etc. Our global SIs can play a big role there. I think it will be a win-win there, right? So there are a lot of things that, we could do.
Awesome. Atul, this was very exciting and inspiring, uplifting. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts here, and definitely look forward to, the companies that are going to emerge in the India innovation opportunity that we are all excited about. Thank you so much, Atul.
Thank you very much, Fanny. Thank you for this opportunity.